Hi there. In this video, I'm going to show you how to handle exceptions in Etlworks. First, let's create a flow. So we're going to be loading data from a Postgres database to Snowflake. So standard flow, nothing fancy. The connection is Postgres. The table is format. We're going to be using S3 stage, CSV format. The connection is going to be Snowflake. And the destination table is going to be format. So the table does not exist yet, so the flow will create it. Let's run it. It's running. Table was created and data loaded. Almost 4,000 records. Okay. So far so good. Now let's force the error. So let's create a mapping. And so the client ID is actually numeric column. So let's assign a text column value to this column and see what happens. As expected, flow generated an error. If you look at the error, it says that numeric value ABC is not recognized. And it also says that it happened in line number 2 and character number and all of this. So let's take a look at audit trail log. The error is recorded, so we know when it happened. So when this flow was executed, this error happens. So technically speaking, there is nothing else to do. We recorded error. We know on which run of the flow it happened. If we open the flow status, we will see that there were 2 executions. On the second execution, it failed with this error. So again, technically speaking, there is nothing else to record. However, in many cases, you want to have a centralized table where you're going to be recording all errors which are happening in all flows. So I have created such a table in Snowflake. Let's take a look. Under the demo schema, there is a table called exceptions with these columns. So when is timestamp, flow name, transformation name, exception stack trace, and possibly SQL statement, which was executed at the time when error happened. So let's check if flow has any data. Just in case it doesn't. So we're going to create an exception handler, which can be shared between all the flows. So when the flow runs and fails, the exception handler will insert the record into this table. I'm going to switch back to flows. I'm going to open the transformations that we created, db to Snowflake. Click mapping on exceptions. So here you have several options. First of all, the default setting is to raise an error, but you can also ignore. So some errors are ignorable. This one does not, but some errors are ignorable. So you can say ignore. You can provide an optional exception mask, a substring which you will find an exception which can identify that, hey, this error should be ignored. And you can have actually comma separated list of errors that you want to ignore. But in our case, we don't want to ignore. We want to raise an exception. Now, this field allows you to enter exception handler in JavaScript. So I'm going to open this, and I already created exception handler. I'm just going to copy it. So this marker is going to be executed on each error for this flow. So if you take a look at actual code here, what it does, it inserts a record into exceptions table with all these parameters. Okay, exactly what we are looking for. So I'm going to save it. Now, we are not done yet. The flow requires an error connection. That connection that is not the same as using source and destination. So it's another connection. You cannot add more connections to this flow. So there's only source, destination, and snowflake connection. So we're going to create a nested flow. And we're going to add the flow that we're actually going to be running, which is DB to Snowflake. And under connections tab, we're going to add a Snowflake connection with the name errors. So this connection is going to be used to store errors. Again, we cannot reuse, we can, but it's not a good practice to reuse the same connection as we have already in the flow, because there is transaction management in place. So if, for example, if transaction manager rollbacks the changes, you will not see the actual error. So that's why we are using a separate named connection called errors. Okay, and this is it. So now when I run this flow, it's going to fail. Some reason, because we are not ignoring exception. It failed, is an error, as we expected. Now let's take a look at exceptions table that we created in Snowflake. It was empty. I'm switching to Explorer. And here's a table. And here's the data. So we recorded that the flow name is DB to Snowflake. That's a transformation name. So would we have multiple transformations? And would they fail? We would have multiple errors here in this table for each transformation independently. So now that's the error we saw already, right? So line 2, character 493, ABC is not a valid value. And that's the SQL which was executed at the time. Everything we were looking for. And this is it. Thank you.